Have you ever felt a cold, creeping feeling in the night? A sense you're not alone, even when you are? It's as if the darkness itself is alive, pressing in from all sides, making the silence feel heavy and suffocating. It's not a ghost or a monster under the bed. It's something inside you, something that lingers long after the lights go out. A voice that whispers your deepest insecurities, a weight on your chest that makes it hard to breathe, a constant reminder of your fears. This is the story of Alara, a person trapped in a prison without bars. A prison built from her own thoughts, invisible to everyone but her, yet as real as any cell. Every day was a battle. Every night, a hallway of doubt, stretching endlessly, echoing with the footsteps of her worries. She was chased by her own mind, the past a heavy chain, the future a looming storm. No matter how fast she ran, her fears always kept pace. Her happiness was a memory, her peace a distant dream, both slipping further away with each passing day. She looked in the mirror and saw a stranger, haunted by a relentless inner critic, unable to recognize the person she had become. How do you escape a prison when the prison is you? When the walls are built from your own thoughts and fears. The walls were made of regret, anxiety, and the need for approval. Her jailers, always watching, always judging. They dictated her choices, stole her joy, kept her small, and convinced her that freedom was impossible. Alara believed this was just life, that everyone carried this secret burden, hidden behind smiles and polite conversation. She accepted her sentence, never knowing she had the key, never realizing that hope was closer than she thought. But one day, a sliver of light broke through, a single powerful idea that pierced the darkness and made her pause. What if these thoughts weren't the truth, but just habits? Old, broken patterns of thinking, learned over years but not set in stone. This idea was a spark in the darkness, terrifying but filled with hope, a tiny flame that could grow if she dared to nurture it. The thought that she could challenge her own mind was revolutionary. It was the first time she saw a path forward, however faint. It was the beginning of a journey, a quest to find the source of her suffering and break free, step by uncertain step. She realized the prison was built from familiar feelings, regret, anxiety, and the need for approval, each one a brick in the wall. These feelings were her jailers, but now she could see them for what they were, old fears, not unbreakable truths. For the first time, she wondered, what if I could change? What if freedom was possible, even for her? The journey would be dangerous, filled with setbacks and uncertainty, but it was the only way out of the darkness. Alara took her first step, determined to find the world outside her mental walls, even if she had to build it herself. The prison wasn't as solid as it seemed. With every challenge, the walls began to crumble, little by little. The key was within her reach, waiting for her to notice it, to believe she deserved to use it. All she had to do was use it, turn the lock, and trust that the door would open. And so, her escape began. With hope in her heart and courage in her step, Alara moved toward the light, ready to discover the world beyond her unseen prison. Alara's journey began with a map, not of places, but of her mind. It was late at night, the world outside silent, as she unrolled the fragile parchment and traced its lines with trembling fingers. This map revealed hidden territories, the Erroneous zones, each one marked with names she'd whispered to herself in the dark. These weren't just bad moods but mental traps, patterns of self-defeating behavior, the need for approval, living in the past, constant worry, fear of the unknown. Each zone was a place she'd visited countless times, often without realizing it. These zones convinced her she wasn't in control, that happiness depended on others or the future. They whispered that her worth was measured by things she could never truly grasp. They were lies repeated until believed, stories etched deep into her thoughts, shaping her reality. Alara saw she'd lived in these zones her whole life. Guilt was a swamp, worry a dense fog, each step forward feeling heavy and uncertain. Self-doubt was a hall of distorted mirrors, reflecting back twisted versions of herself, making it hard to see who she truly was. Seeing them on her mental map was terrifying, but also liberating. For the first time, she could see the shape of her struggles, and that meant she could begin to change. Now she could name her demons, giving form to the shadows that haunted her. When dread washed over her, she could say, "This is worry." Naming it made it less powerful, less mysterious. When shame crept in, "This is guilt." She could finally separate herself from the feeling, even if just for a moment. Naming them created space between her and the thought, a small but vital distance that allowed her to breathe. It was her first act of power, a spark of hope in the darkness. She could finally see the walls of her prison, the boundaries that had kept her trapped for so long. With this knowledge, she could begin to fight back. She was no longer helpless, no longer lost in the maze. The escape had truly begun. Each step forward was a step toward freedom. She was no longer blind to her captors. She could see them clearly, and that changed everything. The map was her first weapon, a guide through the darkness of her own mind, and she was ready to use it, determined to reclaim her life, one step at a time. The first zone Alara faced was the Quicksand of Guilt, a place where every regret and sorrow seemed to gather, waiting to pull her under. It was made of every "I should have" and "if only," every moment she wished she could change. Guilt suffocated her, anchoring her to the past, making it hard to breathe or move forward. The voice of guilt was relentless, whispering in her ear, reminding her of every failure, every misstep. It told her she was unworthy of happiness, that she didn't deserve a second chance. But then, the book, her guide, offered a lifeline. It reminded her that guilt is a useless emotion, a weight that serves no purpose. Guilt cannot change the past. It only punishes you now, draining your energy and hope. Alara decided to fight back, to reclaim her power from the shadows of regret. She separated her actions from her self-worth, realizing that mistakes were not her identity. Mistakes were things she had done, not who she was. She could learn and grow from them. She practiced a new kind of thinking. That was then, this is now. I have learned and I am moving on. Each day she repeated this to herself. Each time guilt appeared, she acknowledged it, recognized its presence, but refused to let it define her or dictate her future. The quicksand tried to pull her back, but she made conscious choices to release the past, step by step. Her energy was better spent living in the now, focusing on what she could change. Slowly, she pulled herself out of the muck, feeling lighter with every effort. She stood on solid ground, realizing guilt only had power when she chose to stand in it, and she could choose differently. The weight began to lift. She was lighter, freer, her heart open to new possibilities. The past no longer held her captive. She could finally breathe again. She could finally move forward, each step a declaration of her freedom. The quicksand was behind her, a memory fading into the distance, and she was ready for the next zone, stronger and more determined than ever before. Free from guilt, Alara entered the fog of worry, a gray mist of what-ifs. Worry made every future possibility a threat, stealing her ability to enjoy the present. Her guide explained, "Worry is using your imagination to create what you don't want. It accomplishes nothing, only ensuring you suffer in advance." Alara realized she spent most of her time in this fog, predicting failure and pain. To escape, she learned to anchor herself in the present. Action was her tool. Worry thrives in inactivity. She focused on what she could control right now. If she worried about work, she prepared. If about a conversation, she planned. Action cleared the fog, slowly but surely. Letting go meant accepting she couldn't control everything. She practiced asking, "What can I do about this right now?" If nothing, she redirected her thoughts to the present. The feel of the sun, the taste of coffee, these became her anchors. The fog began to lift, revealing the clear reality of now. She could finally see her path forward. Emerging from the fog, Alara entered the Hall of Mirrors, self-doubt and the desperate need for approval. Every mirror showed a distorted reflection, shaped by others' opinions. Her sense of self was fractured, pieced together from imagined judgments. Seeking approval was a trap, giving others the power to decide her worth. To escape, Alara stopped asking for permission to be herself. She made choices based on her own desires, not others' expectations. Each act was a rebellion against the tyranny of approval. Some people didn't approve, but as she turned away from the mirrors, she heard her own voice more clearly. She learned self-worth comes from within, not from applause. It is claimed, not earned. She found the one true mirror, the one reflecting her strength, and smashed all the others. The distorted images faded. She trusted her own judgment. She was free from the need for approval. The hall was behind her. The final zone was the shadow of fear, the deepest, most primal fear of the unknown, failure, and change. This shadow lurked behind all the other zones, keeping her from taking risks and embracing life. The shadow whispered, "Don't try. Stay where you are. Change is dangerous." But her guide explained, fear is a shadow, growing larger in the dark, shrinking in the light of action. To escape, Alara did what she feared. She volunteered to speak at work. Her hands shook, but she survived. She traveled alone, nervous but exhilarated. Each step into the shadow made it smaller. The battle wasn't about being fearless, but acting despite fear. Fear became a compass, pointing to her greatest growth. On the other side of fear lay her greatest freedom. She stopped running and faced the shadow. She realized the shadow was cast by her own self, standing in the way of her light. The darkness faded. She stepped into her own power. The ultimate prison guard was gone. She was no longer afraid to live. The world opened up before her. She was ready for the present. After facing guilt, worry, and fear, Alara saw they all stole the present moment. Guilt chained her to the past. Worry and fear dragged her into a terrifying future. Her life was everywhere but here and now. The present is the only place where life happens, the only place with power. To be free, she had to master living in the present. She practiced mindfulness, not as a chore, but as rebellion. Drinking coffee, she focused on the warmth, aroma, taste. Walking outside, she felt the breeze, heard the leaves. These small acts anchored her in the now. Her mind tried to pull her back, but now she had a defense. She acknowledged thoughts, thanked them, and returned to the present. She became the gatekeeper of her mind. She chose what thoughts to keep and which to let go. Alara now understood her mind's landscape. She'd faced guilt, worry, self-doubt, and fear. Now, she had to rewrite the code that built her prison. The first key, self-reliance. She stopped looking outside for happiness or validation. She became her own source of strength. The second key, embracing failure as feedback, not a verdict. She gave herself permission to be imperfect, to learn and grow. The final key, a commitment to lifelong growth. The old zones might return, but now she had the tools and the map. She chose thoughts and behaviors that lifted her up. She was no longer a victim of her mind. She was its master. The prison doors were locked for good. The sun rises, and for the first time, Alara feels its warmth without dread. The prison is gone. The whispers have faded. Her mind is peaceful, filled with possibility. She is not a new person, but the person she was meant to be. This journey was not just an escape, it was a reclamation. She has reclaimed her peace, power, and joy. This is not just Alara's story, it's a promise for all of us. We all have erroneous zones, inner critics, and fears. But the prison door is not locked. You have the key. The power to change your life lies in changing your mind. The journey requires courage and honesty, but every step is a step toward the light. Every act of self-love breaks a chain. Every act in the face of fear tears down a wall. Your most authentic self is waiting just beyond your fear. It's time to come home to yourself.